Pilgrimage of Disillusionment, V.S. Naipaul's India Trilogy. India is a country of pilgrimages. Since the time immemorial, people have been traveling for hundreds of miles to some or other temple or shrine situated somewhere across the length and breadth of India. It may be a pan-national pilgrim site like Vaishno Devi, Tirupati, Kashi, Rameshwar, Jagannath Puri, Dwarka, etc., or maybe some local yatra to a minor deity. It may be an annual event like Pandharpur Wari or once in a blue moon Kumbh Mela. Millions of people flock to these pilgrim sites to wash away their sins and earn spiritual merit so that they can pass their daily lives in peace and prosperity. To achieve this goal, they are often ready to risk even their lives, disregarding the harsh weather, rough terrain, and extreme physical exertion involved in some of these pilgrimages, such as Amarnath Yatra. Others choose more comfortable spots like Shirdi and make not only regular frequent visits but also handsome donations to sign a kind of business deal with the god. Ideally speaking, the physical journey involved in pilgrimage invokes an inner psychological journey which leads to the spiritual awakening. The long tiring expedition followed by the short calm sojourn at the holy place provides a pilgrim with the valuable insights about the self and the world which can be fruitfully used to improve one's quality of life. As a result, we find that even many NRIs undertake frequent pilgrimage to India. One such NRI, or rather a person of Indian origin who came to India in search of his roots, was the Nobel laureate Sir V.S. Naipaul. Born in Trinidad and settled in UK, he visited India thrice in 1962, 1975 and 1988 and recorded his experiences in detail in his India Trilogy consisting of India, an Area of Darkness, India, a Wounded Civilization, and India, a Million Mutinies Now, respectively. This India trilogy reveals the personality and complexes of its author as much as it portrays colorful, lively picture of India full of her landscape, villages, cities, and people. As a child, fed with the mythical images of India by his parents, who had never seen India as his ancestors had come to Trinidad as indentured labor almost 100 years ago, Naipaul had come to India to see the glory of his idyllic homeland. Instead, he was shocked by the stagnant, corrupt present of India. Wherever he went, he saw only poverty, beggary, dirt, defecation, unhygienic lifestyle, fatalism, and aversion to independence. The failure of real India to live up to the image of idealized India in Naipaul's mind gave rise to very strong negative emotions which not only overpowered him but also overflowed in his writing, especially in his first book, India, an Area of Darkness. India, an Area of Darkness, is remarkable for the trueness and honesty of Naipaul. Its initial impression is that of a typical foreigner recording his encounters and insight in India. However, it is more than that. There is a nostalgia for imaginary India which is shattered by the real India. Naipaul writes, I was a tourist, free with money, but a whole experience had just occurred. India had ended only 24 hours before. It was a journey that ought not to have been made. It had broken my life in two. In this book, Naipaul explores India's colonial past and its impact on the present, that is 1960s, and concludes that India's problem did not come from outside, but rather generated from within. It was and is the defense mechanism on the part of Indians who stubbornly refuse to see the obvious. They close their eyes to the painful and disgusting reality and seek refuge in weird spirituality which convinces them that nothing wrong has happened. As a result, while Naipaul saw that India is the poorest country in the world, with perhaps the largest number of beggars, he also noticed that it is because the spiritual function of beggary, which provides common people with instant and easy access to spirituality, as giving alms to beggars is the automatic act of charity, which is an automatic reverence to God. Another problem is the caste system, which was useful division of labor in a rural society in the beginning. But it has now divorced function from social obligation, position from duties. It is inefficient and destructive. It has created a psychology which will frustrate all improving plans. The inertia inherent in the caste-based social structure of India made her vulnerable to foreign invasions. The prolonged foreign rule stripped her of all her resources. Yet Indians still boast of their rich spiritual heritage and their status as the longest surviving ancient civilization, when in fact all the great ideas, concepts and traditions of ancient India are decaying for generations. Indians are outwardly mimicking their foreign rulers without changing their inner world, which is according to them the secret of survival. However, Naipaul begs to differ. He asserts that it is well that Indians are unable to look at their country directly, for the distress they would see would drive them mad. And it is well that they have no sense of history. For how then would they be able to continue to squat amid their ruins? And which Indian would be able to read the history of his country for the last 1,000 years without anger and pain? It is better to retreat into fantasy and fatalism, to trust to the stars in which the fortunes are all written. Such a harsh critique of India in India, an area of darkness, was too much for the fragile ego of Indians, and so it was banned. Naipaul's second book, India, a Wounded Civilization, was equally hard-hitting but devoid of author's own negative emotions. Its cool, descriptive and analytical tone made it more acceptable in India. Written during and about emergency, it focuses more on politics. He sees that there is a strong longing for change among people. Still, the actual process of change is too slow thanks to a strong inclination towards fatalism among Indians. The crisis of India is not only political or economic. The larger crisis is of a wounded old civilization that has at last become aware of its inadequacies and is without the intellectual means to move ahead. The consequence of this intellectual deficiency is the people's naive imitation of foreign rulers without realizing the unsuitability of the importation of foreign ideas, strategies and tendencies to the country. India has always been vulnerable towards foreign influences and has always borrowed outside practices and traditions. They are sterile, divorced from reality and usefulness. These ideas are pulled out of context and do not fit to Indian needs. It is mimicry within mimicry, imperfectly understood idea within imperfectly understood idea. Thus, mimicry leads to absurdity. For Naipaul, the real problem is the underdeveloped ego of Indians, which is created by the detailed social organization. In India, the real identity of a person is still determined by his caste, clan and family. So according to Naipaul, the term Indian is nothing but an empty shell. In India, an area of darkness, Naipaul had admired Mahatma Gandhi as the father of Indian nation and for his positive influence on Indian society. But in India, a wounded civilization, he is more critical of Mahatma Gandhi's actions and reforms. He comes to the conclusion that Gandhi's influence on India has been complete failure. Gandhian non-violence has degenerated into something very like the opposite of what Gandhi intended. Non-violence isn't a form of action, a quickener of social conscience. It is only a means of securing an undisturbed calm. It is non-doing, non-interference, social indifference. Once again, Naipaul categorically blames India's so-called spirituality, withdrawal into one's inner world by meditation and non-violence instead of facing problems of the outer world, as the outer world matters only so far as it affects the inner. It is the Indian way of experiencing for her decline. Its philosophy of withdrawal has diminished men intellectually and ill-equipped them to respond to challenges. It has stifled growth, so that again and again history has repeated itself. Vulnerability, defeat, withdrawal. Naipaul regards the political instability and uncertainty during emergency as a possibility of the new start. India, a million mutinies now. This final book is more optimistic of all. Written in the form of interviews, it points out the positive changes in the society. Less poverty, more education, green revolution, industrialization, new technology, improved standard of living, changes in the social structure and empowered women. Naipaul is thrilled by the India's awakening from the long era of fatalism, passivity and stagnation. Yet, he is not blind to the darker aspects of Indian life, crime and murders being part of everyday life, lingering bureaucracy and corruption, prostitution and despair in the back streets. He rightly comments that during this transition period, we are slowly cutting from the moral ethos of our grandfathers, and at the same time, we don't have the Westerners' idea of discipline and social justice. He also analyzes in detail the Dravidian movement initiated by Periyar and its impact on socio-economic political ethos of India. In the end, Naipaul says, in 27 years, I had succeeded in making a kind of return journey, shedding my Indian nerves, abolishing the darkness that separated me from my ancestral past. Tarun Tejpal points out, what has changed dramatically is Naipaul's way of looking. This time, he has seen India not as a wounded civilization increasingly in decay, but as a fractured land that has been able to, over the last 100 years, with steady acceleration, discover, define, and regenerate itself. This change in India since 1990s is not mere outward mimicry of foreigners as in the past. This time there is an inner transformation as well. Disillusioned with the empty solace provided by the pilgrimage and so-called spirituality of India, the new generation started exploring the world and facing its challenges squarely. The new economic policy of liberalization, privatization, and globalization gave the youth both confidence and opportunities to enjoy real prosperity in their daily lives. Ironically, inspired by Naipaul's pilgrimage of disillusionment, the 21st century Indian youth has gained valuable insights about the Indian self and the rest of the world, which they are actively implementing to improve India for real good.